So good morning. This is the bi-weekly meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. Today is April 27, 2017. As a reminder, this meeting is public and recorded. Today on the agenda, we're going to go over status updates of what folks are working on. Then Louis Pabon has a demo of Quartermaster. And it doesn't look like there is too much else on the agenda. If you have anything that you want to add, please feel free to add things to the agenda. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty short meeting. I'll paste the agenda doc into the chat. So first up, let me see if I can share my screen. We're going to do a quick status overview of what people are working on. So we have the Kubernetes Storage SIG planning spreadsheet here for Q2. These are the issues that folks should be working on. NFS wedging issue. Hemant, are you on the line to give a status update on this? Can anyone give a status update on his behalf?
We haven't made any additional progress on this one yet.
Okay.
But we'll take a serious look at this issue.
Cool. Is Hemant still the right person to be the owner for this?
You can also add me in case. I think Hemant is working on a number of other things as well. So you can add me.
Okay.
Good issue.
Cool. Fix the formatting later. Next up is stabilizing AWS support for EBS. Jing, are you on the line?
Yes.
Do you want to give a status update on this?
I think right now we are focusing on improve our testing on AWS. So
okay.
Yeah.
So Matt DeLeo, our storage SIG PM, wasn't able to be here today, but he wanted to remind us that the deadline for having features in the features repository for 1.7 is coming up. It was supposed to be yesterday, but that deadline has been moved up to Monday, May 5th. So we still have an opportunity to add items. We have apparently new instructions from the PM group that features that go into the features repository are not strictly new features. They can also be user-facing bugs. Anything that impacts the user should be tracked as a feature request in the feature repo. So for some of these issues, we should consider opening a feature in the feature repo. For this AWS EBS support, since we're only adding testing, I don't think we need a feature bug. But for this NFS wedging issue, I think we should open one. Huamin, do you think you can open that?
Yeah, sure. I can open the issue.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is out-of-tree volume plugins. I've been working on this with G from Mesos, and we are planning on having another meeting of the cluster orchestrators next week. And after that, we're hoping to open it up again for basically a second draft to a wider community for input. So keep an eye out for that. Next up is local ephemeral storage, also / capacity isolation and resource management. I believe Jing is working on this. Jing, do you want to give an update?
Yes. So right now, we already have a prototype, and we are working on implement the feature. So some of the features should be in alpha for 1.7.
Nice. And for local persistent storage, Michelle, is the story the same?
Yeah, so I have a few PRs out already, and a number of people have taken a look already and given some comments. So I'm working on applying those changes over. The major things I have out right now are the API changes and then the plugin changes. Once I get those in, then I can start working on some of the basic scheduler changes and the provisioner changes as well.
Cool. And are either of you blocked on anything?
No.
Cool. All right, next up is testing. Jeff or Aaron, do you want to give an update on this?
Well, Saad, I've got one PR out there that is related to the NFS wedge issue. I am trying to write some E2E tests to replicate the environment and try to show that the kubelet doesn't get wedged, that new pods can be created. But that PR is kind of stalled. I'm not getting reviews on it. I'm also very flexible to adding more test cases, additional test cases. But anyway, so any kind of attention to get that PR moving forward would help for the NFS wedge issue. And that's what
Got it. Feel free to add the PR to the agenda as something that needs attention.
Okay.
And get someone to take a look at it. Something else that I wanted to point out was that Eric Veda has been sending out messages to the storage SIG about flaky tests, and we need to make sure that we're paying attention to these and we have folks taking a look at them. I think a few people, Michelle especially, has been helping out a lot. If we could get more people helping out with these, it would be great.
Yeah, we'd be happy to help you look at that, Saad.
Awesome.
I don't know that I've seen this email. I saw Brad send out something that just asked Matthew to help with something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think Matt picked up one that was huge.
Okay.
So just keep an eye on it. I think Eric is sending these out regularly now. He's pinging the SIGs directly and saying these are the issues that are popping up and blocking or failing frequently. And instead of maybe focusing on new tests, we should try to double down on fixing these existing flakes if we can.
Hey, Saad, this is John Cope. Just FYI, I am tracking the stuff that Eric's putting out. I've got one PR in to fix a flake that he's mentioned there, and I'm keeping track of the other ones as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on testing? All right. We'll move along. Cloud provider storage metrics. Hemant was working on this. There was a follow-up PR that Bowie from the networking team sent out. I'm not sure what the status of that was. Hemant was reviewing it along with someone from SIG Instrumentation. If anyone knows the status of that, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, we're going to assume that that's a work in progress. Enabling metrics on volume controller.
So this one I have a second consideration because right now Hemant is making all these metrics, storage-related metrics in the cloud provider. Mm-hmm. So adding another matrix volume controller is actually doing the same thing. So we can drop it.
Okay.
Hemant's work.
So can we go ahead and just remove this item?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, next up is snapshots. Jing or Tomas, either of you want to give an update?
We just have a meeting this Tuesday about snapshot, and we are trying to kind of make a decision, finalize the alpha version of API design for snapshots. And I think Thomas just updated the document. And so I will review it and also put something into the document. And I think by the end of the week, we should have a clear idea about this API.
Nice. There was a proposal that you put out, I think, earlier this week. How did that end up going?
Yeah, there are quite some concerns. And so we are thinking for alpha version at least, so we can don't address it. And later, if it's possible, we can see whether it could be something we can add it on, because it's not like different from the original design. It's more like a feature. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for driving that.
Thank you.
Next up, dynamic update of PVC PV. Sarge was working on this. Apparently, it is a prerequisite for data replication. Sarge, do you happen to be on the line? Doesn't look like he is. Does anybody else know the status of that?
Yeah, so this is Pramod. So on last Wednesday, we decided to put replication on the back burner and focus on the dynamic updates. So Sarge is working on the next level of detail for that, and hopefully in the next SIG meeting, we'll have some info on that.
Cool. Thank you for the update. Next up, we can skip to the attach detach controller restart handling. I believe this was merged. Tomas, you want to give an update?
Yes, the PR was merged, so thank you for that. We've discovered another issue during testing, and I think Jan Shafranek has created an issue for that, but it's unrelated to the issue here.
Cool. And are you sending up a follow-up PR to address the issue that was discovered?
Yes, I can.
Cool.
Give me a moment.
Okay, so we'll take a look at that, and hopefully this feature or this bug fix is close to getting resolved. There was another PR that I was reviewing. I believe it was related to this. Somebody was adding in a basically logic to when a controller restarts and the first time a node is discovered, go out and fetch all the pods for that node and do that for every single node on discovery. And I was wondering if that was required now that we have Tomas's fix for the restart handling and the populator, because it was a very, very big change. I commented on that PR, and we could take that conversation offline. But if anybody has comments on it, feel free to chime in. All right, I'm going to assume there's no comments there, and we'll move along. Next up is stabilizing Azure support. Hwamin, any updates on this?
Yeah, so we find out a few issues on Azure VM instances. I have a PR open to fix that one.
Okay.
Also working on the E2 test to make Azure volumes E2 testable. So still in progress.
Okay. Is this something worth calling out as a separate feature for 1.7, or are these minor enough bug fixes that they're not worth creating a separate feature for?
It's going to be just a few bug fixes eventually. Okay.
So let's say not needed for feature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And for the attach detach controller restart, Tomas, do you think that's worth calling out as a feature for 1.7, or leave it as a bug fix?
I'd leave it as a bug fix because, in my opinion, it's still a bug fix.
Okay. Running stateful applications in the Federation plane. I don't think we got any update on this. We need to follow up with the Federation team.
I think this one has got a lot of attention recently.
Sorry?
The stateful sets on federated planes, that has got a lot of attention recently.
Okay. And do you know who's working on that?
I see this issue being discussed,
Okay.
but I don't know who owns this issue.
Okay. Could I ask you to follow up and find out?
I can fill in the information. I can read something on the notes, so we can start from there.
That would be great. Thank you. Next feature is PVC capacity usage stats. This was something that Jing was hoping to get into 1.7. Jing, I don't think you've had a chance to work on this yet, right?
No, yeah.
Okay. So we'll keep this line item, and hopefully when you have some free bandwidth, you can work on it. And if not, we can move it out of 1.7.
Okay.
Provisioning configuration in PVC. Jan, do you want to talk about this?
I created a second proposal and I didn't get any feedback on that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Does anybody want to volunteer to take a look at Jan's proposal?
Yeah, this is Luis. I wrote a note that I'll take a look at it.
Awesome. Thank you. And who was that, by the way?
Luis.
Luis. Okay. Cool. Luis, can I put you down as the reviewer?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Improving containerization of mounts. This is something that we are beginning to realize is much, much more important for this particular release than we initially thought. We really don't want to get into the business of having everybody, continue to write entry volume plugins, and especially, I think for a lot of OS images, it's kind of painful to make sure that all the bits that are required for any particular storage provider, all the binaries, are present. So I'm glad Jan is working on this. Jan, do you think this is still you're still going to be able to code some sort of solution for this for 1.7?
I'm not sure. It's
Okay.
much more complicated than I anticipated.
Yeah.
I hope to send a proposal today or tomorrow.
Okay.
But then I'm on PTO, so.
So here's what I was thinking. Maybe we can punt the work that you have to 1.8, so you could focus on design in 1.7 and then implementation of alpha in 1.8.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Jing had a interesting proposal to be a stopgap. So your solution was supposed to be a stopgap until we have CSI. And so between your solution and current, Jing is proposing a hack on top of her current solution, which would allow people to basically provide a container and then have her code extract that container into the cheroot that she already creates. That would be a lot less overhead and would allow us to basically have some sort of support for having people provide their binaries. Would that be? Would you be okay with that?
Well, that's not a solution that we can use in Red Hat, but if you want to go this way, be my guest.
What would be blocking in Red Hat?
Cheroot.
Oh, okay. You can't set up a cheroot. Okay. We can follow up offline and see if anyone has any anything against improving this solution. If not, Jing will work on it for this quarter, and we'll see where that goes.
I think we had to solve a similar problem at CoreOS here in order to ship runtime tools for RBD.
Okay.
So maybe we can help comment on that in a proposal there.
That would be great. Is that Caleb?
That is Caleb.
Hey, nice to see you here, Caleb.
Yep.
Can I write you down as a reviewer for this?
Sure. At least as a pointer, I'll find someone from our OS team.
Okay.
So yeah, I can send out the details or a PR for this, and so people can make comments about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for working on this, Jing.
Yeah.
Next item is fixing broken volume reconstruction. This was something that cropped up recently. 1.6, there was a big refactor of the flex volume plugin shipped, and folks started noticing an issue. in particular, volumes or plugins that implement the attach interface. When a volume is attached, after 5 minutes, or after a volume is mounted, after 5 minutes, the volume becomes unmounted. So this is a major issue. Chakri noticed it, and he says the reason for it is the way that volume reconstruction logic is currently implemented. So volume reconstruction logic, the idea here is that after we mount a bunch of things, the kubelet could get restarted or go down for some period of time and come back up. And when it does that, its in-memory cache is gone. So it's dependent on the API server to recover state. And now if the API server loses the original pods that were mounted, for example, those pods were deleted for some reason, then the kubelet really has no place to recover that information, but it still should clean up those mounts. And this reconstruction logic, what it does is it scans the disk and looks for basically orphaned mounts. And when it finds an orphaned mount, it basically makes sure that it ends up getting unmounted. The problem is that the way that this code is written, it tries to recover information about the volume that's mounted simply by looking at the path that it was mounted to, because that contains the plugin information and the volume name. That volume name, unfortunately, is not enough to uniquely identify that volume. And in the Flex case, it is resulting in basically the original volume getting unmounted. And so the fix for this is basically saving more information along with the mount, adding in a metadata file next to the mount directory, so that when reconstruction logic comes around, it's going to read the metadata and be able to recover the full volume spec, and then it can do the right thing. And we'll leave the existing logic as for backwards compatibility and as a fallback, and potentially disable that existing logic for certain volume plugins like Flex where it could misbehave. Chakri mentioned there's a couple other volume plugins where it may misbehave as well. So that's a pretty major fix that we're hoping to get in for 1.7. Is Chakri on the line by any chance?
Hi, Saad, I'm here.
Hey, Chakri. Do you want to give an update?
Yeah. So I was looking at it, and right now, only very few plugins implement the attacher interface. So the ones which implement the attacher interface are fine, but the reconstruction, the basic reconstruction logic is broken in all the plugins which don't implement the attacher interface, almost all of them, including cluster, everywhere. So if the plugins are going to support the attacher interface going forward, we need to fix this. And for the flex volume in the current state, if the users don't implement the GetVolumeName API, it still works fine. The only problem is with the GetVolumeName, which requires this extra metadata to uniquely generate the same name, which is missing.
Cool. So there is a workaround for existing flex volume plugin.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, and actually, I will send a note to the SIG Storage group, and then I have another open PR where I'm planning for 1.6 patch release.
Okay.
We will disable the GetVolumeName API so that users won't run into this issue.
Nice.
And for 1.7, I will send out a proposal like, how do you want to store the metadata? Does it have to be entire spec, or does it have to be a little information which can be used for reconstructing the spec? So I want to hear more thoughts about it, but I will put a small proposal out there, and then we'll collect the feedback.
Cool. Sounds good. And can you paste the issue into the notes here?
I will do that. Yes.
Cool. So it looks like the next steps are you're going to have a temporary fix that you are going to do for Flex and maybe a couple other volume plugins, patch that into 1.6 to fix the issues with 1.6, and that'll go out with the next 1.6 patch release. And then for 1.7, we're going to work on an overhaul of this and add in the metadata for reconstruction.
Okay. Yep.
Cool. And just to put everything into perspective, we are at the end of April right now. Today's April 27. end of May is code freeze. I believe it's the last day of May or June 1st. I'm not sure which. So that leaves us about 1 month left to code, just to make sure we don't slip. I think this one's a very important feature. So
Yes, the only concern, thinking along the lines which will come up, is again the secrets.
figuring out where to store them.
Yes, no. Today the volume plugins have a reference to the secret.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no ref counting for the secrets in the cluster, right? So if you just store the reference, and even though you reconstruct it, what is the guarantee is the same secret?
Let's take it offline to the proposal.
Yep.
Cool. All right, thanks, Chakri.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, Storage OS volume plugin. Simon, do you want to give an update on this? Looks like you added this item here.
Yes. So I've just rebased the PR. We're just going through retesting against master now.
Okay.
Essentially just hoping to get some help on a review at this point.
Cool. And does anyone want to volunteer to take a first pass at this? Reviewing?
Yes, I can take a look.
Awesome. Thank you, Mohamed.
Great. Thank you.
All right. And looks like you already have a feature there. Chakri, for the volume reconstruction, do you think it'll be worth creating a feature for that?
Yes, I will do that. I think it's a big enough change to be a feature.
Cool. Thank you very much. For the Chroot hack, I don't know if we need a feature for this. We'll follow up. I'm leaning towards not. Let's just say not. All right. Thanks for all the updates, everyone.
Saad, sorry,
yes.
Hemant here. Sorry, I was not in the beginning of the call. I just want to give So the NFS wedgings yet to work on it, but it'll be done in time, hopefully, for 1.7. And the cloud provider storage metrics, thus both AWS and GC was already merged, and as you know, Bowie has opened a PR to fix some of the metrics, and AWS have opened a PR as well. So it should be done within like next week. It will be done. So
awesome. And can you update the notes with the PR numbers?
Sure, I'll do that.
Cool. Thank you very much for the update.
Okay.
All right.
Saad, quick thing. I think on the dynamic update and data replication, we might need to reverse the priorities.
Got it. Okay, I'll go ahead and do that right now. Done.
I just spoke with our our Container Linux OS team here at CoreOS. We did a Rocketfly with basically a Chroot to ship the kubelet and the mount tools.
Okay.
But here UCI has a full container for that. So you may want to follow up with them.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for the update, Caleb.
Yep.
All right. Now moving on to the demo. Lewis, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen. You know, you can see it. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen? See the slides?
Yep.
Excellent. Please let me know if the font is too small. So I wanted to bring up this project, which is a continuation of a project that I worked on when I was at Red Hat, which is, while I was there, we took GlusterFS, we containerized it, and we deployed it on top of Kubernetes. So when we did that, we noticed how great that was and how it makes Kubernetes as an operating system makes things very simple to deploy and manage. But then at the same time, we had a set of requirements and steps that needed to be done to be able to manage the storage system on top of Kubernetes. So this project that we started is called Quartermaster it's based on the operator pattern from CoreOS, and it has a set of operators that wait for events that on a certain event, it acts on that, and it calls the appropriate implementation for that storage system that wants to be deployed onto Kubernetes. So unlike some other operators that are specific to a specific application, Quartermaster is more of a framework that allows any type of storage system to be deployed as long as it has a driver supported. Okay, so that's just the big overview. So what my goal is here to propose it to the SIG is to see if we can expand on the number of drivers that Quartermaster has and being able to also have a better relationship between this ability to store and deploy storage easily onto Kubernetes and then use and consume that storage, which is the mounting part, the dynamic provisioning part, and so on, and the step after. So a big quick thing here. As we all know, we all very used to this model of storage attachment to compute. We've dealt with this model for the past 20-something, 30-something years, where we have tape or disks or something attached to over an I/O transport to a compute. And for the last, maybe 40 years ago, it was mainframe and operating systems and then virtual machines. And just want to give you a heads up that this presentation was the presentation I gave during Linux Vault. So I'll be skipping through some of these items, the slides. So one of the things is as we have this one view that we all know and love as storage people, one of the things is that we are looking to change it a little bit. Now that we have Kubernetes, we have a little more features, and now the Kubernetes is really the operating system of the entire data center. So instead of viewing storage as a separate entity, separate from Kubernetes itself, we can view it as Kubernetes being able to manage the entire cluster. Okay, so we have nodes with disks, and we have nodes without disks. And we could have it that Kubernetes manages not just the storage systems and many of the cluster types. We could have clusters with GlusterFS, we could have clusters with Swift, we could have clusters with Portworx, we could have clusters with Rook, any type of storage system, as long as it's all managed from the same control plane, which is Kubernetes. Okay, and again, this is all based on software-defined storage. So now that we have that, let's take a look at what Quartermaster actually is. So Quartermaster, it's a small container. Is that waits for events.
Excuse me, is anybody else seeing only half the screen?
Yeah, me too. I don't know why that is.
Okay. Is there a way we can make it full screen or?
How is?
That's perfect, yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent, thank you. So let me actually put it in percent mode. See, is this better?
Yes.
Yes, much better.
Okay, good. So again, Quartermaster is a small container. It has the drivers in it at the moment. We can always expand on that later. But it has the drivers to be able to support the deployment and the management of the specified storage system that you want to deploy. So the way it works is that an administrator or a UI or whatever method to be able to communicate with the Kubernetes APIs will be able to deploy a third-party resource called a storage cluster. A storage cluster is an object that defines what nodes and what storage to use to deploy the storage that you want. For example, if you want a Ceph or you want Rook, you can specify those disks, or if you want GlusterFS. And again, today, we specify the disk. It could be that as we move forward, we could use the features of persistent local storage to be able to assign disks to these storage systems. But for today, we create this storage cluster third-party resource. We submit it to Kubernetes. That creates an event into Quartermaster. It reads that storage cluster object, and in one cluster, it has many nodes. That's what the definition of a cluster is. So it reads the number of nodes inside the cluster, and it creates a storage node third-party resource for each one of those.
Luis, may I ask you a question before you get much further? So will Quartermaster manage all these drivers within it and have to worry about versioning and testing? I mean, I think this was kind of the hell that we went through with OpenStack, right? Was driver.
That's right. That's a very good point.
Is that what you're proposing, or did I misunderstand?
No. So there's two ways to use Quartermaster today. One is that you put your driver inside Quartermaster, right? And then Quartermaster, the container, employs or has all those drivers inside of it. And just like Cinder does, for example, or Manila, or some other driver, right? System. But you don't have to do it that way. You could create your own driver and just pull Quartermaster as a library into yours and just run Quartermaster in your own container, right? But you still benefit from the same APIs and the same third-party resources and such. So you don't have to be part of the Quartermaster container. You could have your own, but you could just pull the Quartermaster as a library into yours.
Okay.
So then Quartermaster takes those nodes and submits them back into Kubernetes, which then creates another event for it to look at each one of those nodes that were submitted and then initialize those nodes with the appropriate methods that are needed for that appropriate driver, okay? So today, the architecture is quite simple. It has two operators that look for events for a storage node, third-party resource, and storage cluster, and then they call the appropriate drivers for that storage system. And again, like Aaron, just like you mentioned, you don't have to be part of Quartermaster container itself, but you still have this entire framework that you can use. So let me take a little skip here to a little demo. And let's take a look here. Let's maximize this. Can you guys see this? My screen?
Yes.
It's my screen. It's a screencast demo. You guys can see that, the console.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. So the very first thing we're going to do here, and this demo I gave it at Linux Vault. The very first thing it's going to do is going to check the number of nodes, and then what we're going to do here is then check that Quartermaster is running in the system. So we're going to actually deploy it, and then we're going to check that it's running. So it's that simple to deploy it. So let's go here. Let's make this a little bit faster. Sorry about that. So there it is running. And then what we're going to do next is look at a storage cluster third-party resource. This third-party resource right here defines 3 nodes used to deploy for clusterfs. And as you can see here, the specs as type. Type is important for Quartermaster to determine which driver to use. It has a set of devices, and then it has a section here which the definitions can use to specify information that is needed specifically by that cluster. So you can pass, for example, if Ceph wanted something specific or Gluster wants something specific, you could pass that information right here. And the driver will be able to absorb that and use that information accordingly. So here we have that storage cluster, and what we're going to do here is that we're just going to deploy it. So when we deploy it, we can see from the top, we have a watch on the top. The very first thing that Quartermaster does, or the driver actually does, is that it deploys Saketi, which is a volume manager for clusterfs. Once that is ready, and it goes ahead and deploys clusterfs across the nodes that were defined in the storage cluster third-party resource. So as you can see here, here's clusterfs coming up now, and soon it will be fully up and ready to run.
So, Luis, how does this integrate into the service catalog? Is it on top of it? I mean, to me, it kind of seems like a natural extension of how service catalog, you could request storage from it. So
service catalog is in Helm?
As in service broker services catalog, not necessarily Helm, no.
I don't know how to answer that question. I guess we can take that offline. And
okay, yeah, we can talk about it separately.
Okay.
I had one question. Is the pattern for quartermastered a separate Kubernetes cluster for a software-defined storage cluster and a separate one for workloads? Is that the pattern that you're trying to promote, or?
No, actually, that's the opposite pattern. It's one Kubernetes cluster. You could have thousands of machines, and then let's say, for example, as an administrator, I want a 10-node ClusterFS cluster, and then I could just execute that and run that on my cluster.
I see. So you could have, it's kind of hyper-converged, essentially, is the pattern.
In a way, it's hyper-converged. I mean, you could have apps running on the same nodes that are running there, but you may not. It all depends on the CPU availability, memory availability.
Yeah. Is there a pattern that you support where it could be separated? Does that work as well?
Absolutely. I mean, so if we have today, you can define the nodes that you can deploy the containers to, the storage containers onto. And then after that, you just have to make sure they consume 100% of the resources, and then nothing else can be scheduled on that.
Sure. So, I mean, the vision I have in my head is you could have two clusters. One is just for workloads, and one for storage for some, maybe for some use cases, and they can communicate with each other, if you will, and they could be two different operators operating each of those as well.
There's nothing stopping you from doing that. That definitely can be done.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So as we continue here, we have the entire cluster is now ready. And as you can see here, we have a storage cluster information that we can get back from kubectl. And there's YAML information that they're all state about the cluster is saved onto Kubernetes itself. And that's really key also, because it's not just about deployment, but it's also about management of your storage cluster, where now you can get status from it. So for example, if you have a UI that manages your entire Kubernetes cluster and you wanted a section for it to view your storage clusters, you can now, just by executing these commands, which are just regular Kubernetes API calls. Not only that, but by supporting updates, for example, if you wanted to add more disks or wanted to add more nodes, you could just change the cluster, the storage cluster third-party resource, and then Quartermaster will get an event, and then it would act upon that. For example, if you want to delete a drive, add a drive, and so on. So in here, you can see the status is true.
Sorry to interrupt. What do you mean by get an event? Is it just watching the API server and noticing that there's a new add or update? Or?
Yes, that is how most of the API controllers work in Kubernetes, not just operators. So if you look at the code, for example, for deployment or anything like that, they get an event and they go into like a channel, a queue, and they get reconciled, so they get worked on. So an operator pattern is just that same logic, but outside the API server. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So here we have now that we have storage cluster, we have a single storage cluster, we have the storage nodes that were created automatically. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a demo. A demo is going to be a simple demo of a Nginx container running with 3 BusyBox containers running, reading and writing to the same ClusterFS volume, okay? So what we have here is a persistent volume claim that we're going to use dynamic provisioning to create a volume from gluster.qm.default of 34 gigs. 34 gigs, why not? Not 32, right? That have to be a little bit different. So, and then after that, we have a service just for Nginx. We have the pod for Nginx that's going to mount that persistent volume claim on the HTML directory. And then we have the replication controller, which is going to do a replica 3 of BusyBox, which is all it's going to do is just output the date and the name of the host onto a file called index.html, which is going to get picked up by Nginx. So here we have that we're going to create this. There it goes. That it sets up the containers to run. It also sets up the dynamic provisioning from GlusterFS. It creates the volume. Now we can go ahead and look at the application. We're going to look at no port here to be able to access it, because be able to talk to the application, the Nginx application. So let's see here. There's no port 32003. So here we go. Do a curl on that. And here we go. So now we can see by talking to it that we are getting information. Here's one of the busy boxes writing to it. Here's another one, and another one writing to the same cluster, flexvolume. And the cool thing about this was that it all was deployed using a Kubernetes constructs, right? Everything was deployed using a third-party resource. We got status using a third-party resource. We then deployed using dynamic provisioning, and then use that. We consume that storage in the end. Okay. So let me go. Lastly, bring up the GitHub.
Fix your screen again. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, it's half again.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I don't know why it does that. So here we have Quartermasters available on GitHub. Please take a look, try it out. And the goal of this demo and is to, again, to try to move it into Kubernetes incubator. So we need a champion. And then in the long run, we would like it to be incubated so that it can be integral part of the Kubernetes deployment, so that it can bring storage closer to users to be able to easily deploy storage onto the Kubernetes systems. And then the key part too is, so there's a question I had one time when I was talking to the Rook guys, was, Rook IO is starting to work on their own operator. And they say, why do we need Quartermaster if they have their own? And I explained that it's really of a standardization of the API, because if not, everybody's going to have their own model of doing things. And at the same time, Rook has had to learn how to do an operator and create events and attach and so on to Kubernetes. But other storage vendors may not have the knowledge or the expertise to be able to attach to Kubernetes immediately. So instead, by attaching to the framework, it does all these things for you. And it just has a set of functions that you just need to fill in the interface to be able to deploy your storage system. So, any questions?
I've got a couple questions. One is regarding implementation, and second question kind of about general direction. So first one is, how are you getting access to the storage underneath? Is it just an empty dir? So when you deploy a storage like a GlusterFS container, how does it get access to the underlying storage on the node machine?
Great question. So doing my research for my presentation of Vault, I talked to many of the vendors that deploy storage onto Kubernetes. And every single one of them, without fault, deploy in privileged mode. And they do this so that it can get access to /dev. So /dev is pretty much passed onto the container, and it's saying, here you go, you're in control. So in the GlusterFS demo you saw right there, /dev devices were passing in the storage cluster definition in the third-party resource, has a set of an array of disks that are given to Quartermaster and saying these disks are for this container, this GlusterFS container to take control of.
And how does Kubernetes currently support allowing an arbitrary pod to have access to devices? I didn't realize it did. I might be wrong.
You have to allow the containers, the pods, to run in privileged mode. That's the only thing that, once you do that.
That is how we do it today, but isn't that a common complaint of storage? I mean, that prevents adoption in some environments, mainly cloud environments, because we have to run in privileged mode.
Yeah, I agree. In cloud environments, now this is a great segue. Thank you. Cloud environments are a little bit different. This is mainly for on-premise because you're looking to provide storage back to applications. But in cloud environments where you have EBS or you have Google Block Storage or other things like that, you may or may not want to use Quartermaster. There may or may not be a need. For example, if you want to create a file system, GlusterFS is great for it. But you may not want to create, for example, a block storage system in the cloud. But you're right. There may be an issue, for example, to deploy in Amazon container servers or in Google container servers to be able to force it to do that. Right now, there's I haven't seen one storage system that does not use privilege mode.
And it sounds like once local storage is out, you can get around that.
Once local storage is out, that could be a way that that device is passed on to the container, as long as the container can do PV create, LV create on that device without using.
You need access to the raw block device.
Yeah, that's the thing. You need to be able to affect the block device. And we need that metal. I mean, that may be new to the kernel or something like that, something we work on, but at the time that we have now, there's no other way, as far as I know.
Okay, so my second question was around where this would fit in. And I'm thinking this is a mechanism by which to deploy an application onto Kubernetes. In this case, the application happens to be very special cased. It's a storage system. But I wonder, and this is going back to something that Aaron mentioned earlier, whether there is some existing project that this could be kind of rolled into, maybe Helm, maybe something else, where this Quartermaster can be added in addition to supporting the regular set of applications that they support, now they would, with the help of Quartermaster, support basically storage applications.
Okay. So who do I talk to?
That is a good question. I'm not certain.
There is a service catalog SIG that you can go to.
The service catalog SIG, Paul Morey. I'm kind of working on that though, Luis. A device for making storage more cattle-like. I mean, my basis is of course around CNS and Gluster, just demoed here, but you know, I think we're on the same page. I think I would like to see it not only be restricted to on-prem. You know, I think this has to be solved for the cloud as well. So,
I mean, I agree that there could be other solutions that people want that are software defined that are not part of it, EBS or other cloud providers.
Yep. So, just to include Luis, I'd love to be on board for it because I'm also kind of working in parallel with what you're doing.
And there's also the resource management working group that's a combination of SIG node and other interested parties for scheduling more workloads that have more hardware locality requirements. So like multiple GPU support. So you need access to raw devices in dev. So it's like a special case of a block device versus like a GPU.
Okay. And
Aaron, this is Arlon.
Are you going to be able to?
Sorry, go ahead, Ardalan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I have a question. Can you update the cluster, add nodes, remove nodes, and then I noticed you have NFS and GlusterFS. What happens when you add nodes and delete nodes?
So good question, Ardalan. Right now, nothing. But the architecture is going to support the ability to, when you GlusterFS, to add more nodes to your cluster. And then remove a node when it's, you know, something happened to it, you're going to get replaced, or add more disks to those nodes. So it needs to be cluster. So in NFS, it doesn't really support that. NFS right now is just NFS Ganesha, and it's just adding another node will just be another Ganesha server.
I see.
But it's more of a demo for NFS. The real one there is Gluster's implementation.
So you're assuming that the storage vendors already have the volume plugin drivers for Kubernetes?
That's right. That is right. And if for dynamic provision, I know there's a project to move the dynamic provisioning externally. You know, Quartermaster could be a place that dynamic provisioning external provisioning could sit in if those developers wanted to do it that way.
Well, I kind of see these as two separate parts of the coin, right? Like what you're working on, what Quartermaster, the problem that it's trying to solve is the deployment of the server-side components necessary to deploy a new storage system. Yes. Whereas most of what we work on here in the storage SIG assumes that the server-side bits are already up and running somehow, some way, and we focus mostly on the consumption of that storage system. And so That's why it sounds like what the next steps for you should be are to go to the SIG service catalog, because they focus mostly on how to deploy applications on top of Kubernetes. And it sounds like this would be a perfect fit there. I'm not sure they focus too much on how to deploy storage applications. And it looks like you got a pretty solid solution here. And I wonder if you could roll that in with one of the existing projects. If we could, I think that would be a perfect home for it.
Okay, I'll definitely talk to them.
Cool.
So if the storage can expand and shrink, then that solves your problem at Quartermaster of adding and removing nodes to the cluster.
Yes. So if the storage system supports that, then the drivers in Quartermaster can get an event when the administrator has added or removed devices from the storage cluster or third-party resource. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you. Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the time, guys, and for the heads up.
All right. Thanks a lot for the demo, Luis. Any more questions for Luis? All right. Let's move on. Going back to the agenda. Onboarding docs and process. I'm looking at the time right now. It's 9:59. I think we're going to punt that to the next meeting. There is an item someone added about OpenStack Boston. Anybody going? Was it Chris who added that?
I didn't add that, but I added a few pieces of information there, just about the open source days that Kubernetes is participating in. There are a few discussions about storage there, and we're also during some of our main event keynotes, we're also going to be highlighting Cinder integrations with Kubernetes storage too. So those are just a few notes, and I'll be available at the summit if anyone's there and they want to chat about anything.
Nice. Is anyone else planning on going?
Yeah, Saad, actually, I added that item. I'm planning on going there, so if anyone else in the SIG is going, I'd be happy to meet up with anyone to talk or anything like that.
Awesome. Looks like we have good representation.
I'm going as well.
Cool. Maybe you guys should do a little get together while you're there. All right. Maybe add the names of the folks who are going in the agenda doc, and you guys can coordinate offline. Last item is Mount Containers Design. Who added that?
It was me.
Okay.
I don't think we have enough time, and I have just one question. Do we need to run flex volumes in containers? Because it brings quite a lot of work.
No. So Chakra, you could disagree maybe, but I believe the current implementation of Flex is we have it. It's an exec-based model. It calls out to the script, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
and the script needs to be on the host. Now it's the question if it could be in a pod or in a container. Because that's what we do with the containerized mounts.
My plan is to leave the existing version of Flex as is. It's going to be an exec base model. It calls out to a script. The script does whatever it wants to do. We're not going to bother with modifying or tweaking that. What we come up with for CSI, and if we call that Flex 2, will be a separate, I don't know if it's going to be a plugin or if it'll be something lower level, but that's going to take advantage of this containerization and making sure that the bits are run, are run as part of a pod.
I will send a proposal probably with the flex volume and maybe not implemented in the alpha version.
I think that's fair.
Okay. I have a couple of other questions, but we don't have time for that. So.
Sure. I'll go ahead and move this and the onboarding doc process to the next meeting, and we'll bump it a little bit higher so it'll get more time.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, John. Anyone else have anything they want to talk about? All right. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Saad. Bye.